Hello everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of GPS Finally Plays a Game 6 years after it comes out. Look, it's not because I hadn't heard of the Uncharted series, how could you not? These games have become astronomically influential over the past decade and a half, to the point where Nathan Drake arguably is, or at least was, Sony's mascot, battling it out with the likes of Mario and Master Chief. It's kinda wild looking back and seeing where everything started, and the journey it took to get to where it is now. Back in 2007, Sony really needed a reason for consumers to drop a whole $600 on the shiny new PS3. $600! That's more than the PS5, if you could actually buy it. As always, Sony continued preaching about their HD graphics that would make the puny Xbox 360 melt if it even thought about running a PS3 title. This claim, of course, doesn't hold much water if the console didn't even have any major exclusives. Fortunately for Sony, this came with Uncharted, Drake's Fortune. The lush jungles and bombastic score accompanying at the time solid gunplay and set pieces made Drake's Fortune a memorable and worthwhile experience. Its success would soon spawn two more sequels on the PS3, both building on the foundation of the first game as Naughty Dog became more comfortable with this genre of a playable blockbuster. After a short break to work on a small game called The Last of Us, our favorite devs returned in 2016 for the final chapter of Nathan Drake's tale, Uncharted 4: A Thief's End, which, as the title and thumbnail suggest, is my personal favorite of the series, and it's not even close. Uncharted 4 gives us what I believe to be a damn near perfect conclusion to the adventures of the Dude Raider himself, all the while breaking away from the formula just enough to craft both a refreshing and familiar experience for fans of the franchise. Naughty Dog takes everything they've learned from the first three games and The Last of Us to create something in which the passion, care, and thought put in is more than evident. So join me as we explore how those initial small beginnings have led us to that precious greatness. Visuals have always been key in the Uncharted franchise. They're games that someone who isn't even holding the controller are likely to enjoy watching due to the sheer graphical quality and spectacle. The original three games all hold up fairly well even today despite being ancient relics now. That being said, the jump to PS4 was the gift we didn't deserve. Excluding The Last of Us DLC and remaster, Uncharted 4 was Naughty Dog's first game of the 8th generation. Transitioning to a new hardware is a challenge for any developer, yet they knocked it out of the park regardless. Of course, it doesn't look nearly as good as like Last of Us 2 for example, but for 4 years before that game, it's stunning. The Uncharted games have always strived for a realistic look. The PS3 did limit them a bit to a slightly more cartoonish art style, but here they start to look pretty darn close to real people. If you compare the first three games to each other, the character models all look generally the same between entries. Switch over to 4 and everyone got a complete makeover. Every face is that much more believable and realistic. The attention to detail when it comes to wrinkles and all the little crevices on faces you wouldn't even think about is insane. This graphical upgrade alone was enough to make the game worth the wait. Like, this is Elena in Uncharted 3, and this is her in 4. Like, dude, the glow up! A lot of what makes these faces work so well is the animation. And the funny thing about that is this was also the first time Naughty Dog used facial motion capture. The ping pong ball suits have been around for ages now, but the face sensors are a more recent addition to the cutscene creation process, and they work great here. Now so much more of the actors' performances are present, as what you see is quite literally them doing it. Especially for some of the more emotional stuff in this game, it's that much more poignant. Of course, this is largely part of the casting as well. The original trio, Nolan, Emily, and Richard, feel more connected with the characters than ever before. If I had to guess why, it's probably because this is their 4th time doing it. I think that's a fairly safe bet. They so seamlessly blend right into their roles, and my immersion was never broken. But with every Uncharted game comes new characters, meaning new actors to bring them to life. So, how do they hold up? Pretty damn well. When a game features Troy Baker and Laura Bailey as prominent roles, you already know the acting's gonna be top notch. These two are veterans. They've been in so many games that there's no way you haven't played at least one of them. I'll save the rest of my gushing about the characters for later since I actually have to talk about the rest of this game, but don't worry, we will be back. What were we talking about again? Oh, graphics, right. One of the things I didn't love about Uncharted 1 was the real lack of diversity with areas. It boiled down to jungles and darkness, which as you can imagine gets old kinda quick. Thankfully, its successors fixed this, including 4. A Thief's End has you switching areas pretty frequently, so it's not like you're gonna get bored with what you're seeing. Each environment is so pretty in its own right. Swinging around in Panama was a fantastic introduction, sliding in Scotland was a sight to behold, and Madagascar, man, Madagascar! Driving across the vibrant sands in a 4Runner was such a surreal experience that I wouldn't trade for anything. So just now, I've only mentioned outside areas, which is where you'll spend the majority of your hours playing this game. but that's not to say the indoors shouldn't be mentioned. The lighting here is consistently appealing and makes everything that much nicer to look at. But the real accomplishment here is due to Naughty Dog's insanely meticulous nature. Nate and Elena's home has to be one of the most impressive chapters in this regard. Every room has been cluttered with everyday items in a perfectly messy manner. Some poor developer spent ages slaving away at their computer to make sure the dishes weren't done. The laundry was all over the place. The computer was covered with post-it notes. Their house just feels so lived in. They even added a guy walking his dog outside that's only visible through the teeny tiny little windows. Like, they did not need to do that, but I'm so glad they did. Then you have the likes of the auction, a room crowded with dozens of people, yet there are no frame drops to be found. The optimization is nothing short of phenomenal. Not only does it look great, but sound great too. That's right, baby, we're talking about the sound design. I want to always make an effort to talk about the sound design in my videos, when it applies, of course. Like, there's a reason I didn't go too in depth with Doki Doki, but I like to mention the audio side because I feel it so easily goes underappreciated by players and critics. Everyone gets caught up with the shiny graphics, myself included, but they're only half the package. The sound design of Uncharted 4 can be described as hyper-realistic, because sometimes the gratification is more valuable than the accuracy, and with an over-the-top franchise like this one, it's a no-brainer. You can hear the quick whip of fists from punches and ropes from throwing. For stealth sections, you get handy little alerts to inform you of what enemies are thinking. When strangling foes, the cracking of their neck couldn't be more obvious. The gunfire is more focused and thin, a change I wasn't too fond of at first, but grew to appreciate as it gives a higher sense of velocity, as well as contrast the more powerful golden weapons. All of this is accompanied by some real bangers from Henry Jackman. It was a bit sad to see Greg Edmondson get replaced, but the new OST still goes hard. Each song blends into every circumstance damn near flawlessly. The several battle themes use strings, horns, and percussion masterfully to invoke that extra adrenaline. Then there's the melancholic side of the spectrum with For Better or Worse. Driving through New Devon with Nate and Elena, and this song genuinely remains one of the most memorable portions of gameplay for me. Something that threw me off when I first booted up A Thief's End was the title screen. It's deadly silent with no trace of Nate's theme to be found. But then you finish the opening, 4.0 kicks in, and it hits that much harder because it's almost like you had to earn it this time. That combined with flashbacks to past adventures builds for such an overwhelming sensation. Everything presentation-wise is on point. Graphics, acting, audio, music, you name it. Now this is cool and all, but I actually just realized that Uncharted 4 is in fact a video game, so we should probably talk about playing it. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this, but my guy Neil Druckmann has gone on record saying, for us, with The Last of Us specifically, we don't use the word fun. We say engaging. And it might seem like a minor distinction, but it's an important one for us. Luckily for us, this game isn't Last of Us, and Naughty Dog weren't trying to be pretentious edgelords while making it. Uncharted 4 is, dare I say it, fun? Uncharted gameplay can be divided up into about 4 sections: traversal, combat, puzzles, and set pieces, all of which are irrefutably simple at their core, but are so refined in this installment that the gameplay loop is gonna hold up for the full runtime. And A Thief's End adds some very welcome changes, easily making it some of the most enjoyable hours of fun in the series. First, traversal, getting from point A to point B. This wouldn't be an Uncharted game without lots and lots of climbing. Now, I do understand that this isn't the most riveting gameplay in the world, and I'm not about to praise it to the high heavens, but I do want to appreciate the improvements from its predecessors. The most obvious is the overall feel you'll first get. There's this enhanced fluidity and control right off the bat, and a lot of that's due to the new 360-degree movement as you can control Nate's hands directly. I would be lying if I said I didn't have a good time just blasting through, jumping from each rock to the next as quickly as I could, because this game lets you do that, unlike the stinky climbing in God of War. Damn, that was atrocious. To spice things up, A Thief's End gives a few other options while scaling walls, so it's not literally just pushing the stick and mashing X. Later down the road, you'll get a pipe that you have to stab into into patchy parts of surfaces to stick to. And again, it's not like these make you think too hard at all, but they're a gladly accepted addition that does nothing but benefit these segments. Plus, you cannot deny how satisfying it is to jump onto a wall with these and see that massive scrape it leaves. While you move through the jungle gym, or really anywhere in this game actually, there will be slopes of gravel for you to slide down. These guys are a whole lot of fun. Nathan's tush probably isn't doing too well, but it's worth it for the thrill of jumping off at the last second. Or even better, jumping into a swing! Let's go, baby! Uncharted 4: A Thief's End makes you feel like Spider-Man. Wait. Oh shoot, is that why? Oh no! But seriously, casting your rope in midair to keep your momentum going is easily my favorite part of the gameplay. Nothing beats it. Except maybe Miles Morales, it's pretty close. That's about it on the traversal front. It's still fairly basic, but by far the most well executed and extensive in the series. Now, while you go about your adventure, it's inevitable that we come across a more aggressive part of the game. I don't know why I did that, it's not that intense. If I'm being frank with you guys, I think I actually prefer Uncharted 3's combat slightly better, but that's not to say 4 is completely inferior. They both have their own respective strengths. The bullet spread is wider now, which was a bummer at first, but it's really not that hard to get used to, and it's still miles better than the BS you get in 2. A Thief's End also gives you this handy dandy hit marker, which makes headshots all the more satisfying, and so you can tell when an enemy has gone down for sure and isn't just behind cover again. Just like previous entries, circle is pressed to either roll or take cover, and it feels great. The predecessor's jank is pretty much gone, and every action is that much more natural. While you're camping behind your conveniently waist-high cover, enemies will either try to flank you or throw grenades. They remove the ability to throw bombs back, which stinks, but it's nothing to cry about. But camping is for losers. Real men bring their fist to a gunfight. The melee here is quick and snappy. Enemies are taken down in just a couple blows, because the real challenge is getting to them. They don't make you do a whole QTE brawl out like Drake's Deception, which I kinda miss as well, but as long as it isn't Uncharted 1 melee, I won't throw a tantrum. A Thief's End also takes what Naughty Dog learned with The Last of Us in improving their stealth system. Sneaking around is now a far more viable way to chip away at the masses than ever before. You've got the classic tall grass that makes you invisible. Sometimes enemies will spot corpses and freak out, and they all have this little diamond above their heads letting you know how aware they are of your presence. Thanks guys! It's nowhere close to what Naughty Dog would soon accomplish in The Last of Us 2, but a huge upgrade for the franchise nonetheless. I wouldn't be surprised if you could do entire encounters without being spotted. I'm sure I got close once in a while, but would always get impatient and just go for the 6 sky attacks. Bro! I changed my mind. This is the best part about the gameplay. Literally the coolest feeling in the world. I could not get enough of pulling these guys off. But believe it or not, there is more to life than shooty shooty bang bang, sky attack, sky attack, sky attack. Sometimes Uncharted 4 makes you think. Puzzle solving is a staple of the series. Are Uncharted puzzles good? Well, it depends. While often looking extremely elaborate with their massive scale, they can be notorious in giving too much away with the notebook. So it's not uncommon that you know the solution right away and spend more time entering the answers rather than figuring it out. A Thief's End definitely isn't immune to this, but I found that generally the notebook either took more of a backseat or was used in a far more creative way. One of my favorites is the sigil puzzle underneath the clock tower. The premise is simple: connect the arrows on the sides. Then they slowly increase the difficulty each round, hiding the arrows, making Nate have to go cut out his own little sigils in his journal. And then you have to solve it in said journal. That's adorable. Yes, you can keep banging your head against the wall until it matches up, but the important thing is that you're actually spending time solving it regardless. The clock tower actually has another brain teaser that I very much appreciated. They take advantage of the environment and design it so Nate can climb across the hands of the clock if you change the time on the other side. Now that's dope. It's the exact cleverness I just love to see in these games. I know I somewhat criticized this like 2 seconds ago, but I think Naughty Dog's trial and error puzzles are actually some of their more effective ones. You don't have to deal with the tedium of glancing back and forth from a piece of paper, as all your attention is constantly consumed by one task at hand. The cycle, cross, bucket, whatever this is, puzzle was enjoyable for me because I never had to take my eyes off it. I could make changes on the spot instead of walking across the whole damn room, or worse, whipping out my notebook. I don't know what this says about my IQ, but I appreciated not losing my train of thought because everything was right in front of me. Same goes for this guy with the lights and spheres. It's just 10 times more convenient. Let me remind you that they ain't all great though. At the end of the day, the presentation is always going to manage to make these come off as more impressive than they actually are. There's this stupid one where you have to push around barrels and you can't freaking see because the literal only light source is Sam's dinky lighter. Then Naughty Dog implements their classic push around a crate like 10 gazillion times. At least it's not a literal ladder, but come on guys. Regardless of their at times repetitive nature, the puzzles will always accomplish one thing: giving you a breather. I mentioned this in my video on The Last of Us, how therapeutic it can be to slow down the heart rate a bit so you don't start spontaneously combusting. Contrast is pretty much crucial in making all the individual segments hit with as much weight as they do. Like if the entire game was just set pieces, they would get old so quick. I would not be sweating nearly as many bullets when helping Nate cheat death again for the 947th time. The set pieces are actually a fairly consistent complaint I've heard in others' opinions about this game. And while I'm about to defend them, I do see where they're coming from. With Uncharted 4, Naughty Dog took a necessary semi-departure from the tone of previous games. Within the box art alone, it couldn't be more obvious as to how much grittier and grounded this adventure was supposed to be. Heck, the title practically implies Nathan dies, and you know that son of a gun Neil Druckmann really thought about making that happen.
What was the first question?
Joel, alive or dead?
It depends at which point. Everybody dies at some point.
As part of their effort to increase the stakes of this game, they couldn't afford to suspend the audience's disbelief nearly as much as they had in the past. That's not to say Nathan Drake is suddenly slow as molasses and dies in one hit, but he's also not climbing up a freezing train after getting shot in the stomach, or falling out of a plane to survive a trudge across the blazing desert. That's a bit too far for this story. I can completely see why longtime fans would be disappointed in this more realistic approach, but this is still an Uncharted game. It's still ridiculous. Like, are you really gonna tell me this is boring? What, you need me to start blasting rave music or something? Every Uncharted game has a car sequence, at least 1 through 4. I still gotta play Lost Legacy, and let's be honest, Golden Abyss barely exists. But automobiles are a given, and the last time I checked, this is the first time Nate is being dragged around on a rope. Huh? The Jeep sequence is definitely the highlight of the game in this regard. The transition between every beat is flawlessly cinematic, and every time you think it's over, it just keeps taking you on that ride we all know and love. I hate to keep coming back to the clock tower, but the half minute or so it takes for him to fall is just so perfectly bonkers. And it ends with you swinging down in your grappling hook. Man, I love the grappling hook. Did I mention I love the grappling hook? If I'm being totally frank with you guys, these set pieces still feel completely like Uncharted. They didn't stray away from the roots enough to alienate the players, and the immense adrenaline rush is still very present. This sprint through falling buildings with Sam perfectly encapsulates the explosive, chaotic energy we crave for, and the graphical upgrade only enhances that effect. To sum everything up, Uncharted 4 has some fairly basic gameplay with neat additions and extraordinary presentation. This fresh coat of paint allows for the somewhat dated gameplay to be repolished and for the most part hold up to modern standards. I could keep going, but I'm getting close to 4,000 words on the script now, and I've yet to even mention the narrative, so we're gonna move right along. If we're being real, Uncharted plots have never been exceptional. They were a means of having a reason to complete a certain task, and as long as you didn't think about them too hard, it was a good time. That's still partially true in A Thief's End, but I found the story to be surprisingly competent this time around. Despite a few contrived instances here and there, Uncharted 4 tells a legitimately solid narrative, and in my opinion, the best in the franchise by a mile. While elements of the original trilogy are certainly still here, A Thief's End does quite a few things to make itself unique. The 3 flashbacks/forwards that we get in the opening all establish a new relationship that we have no knowledge of prior to this game, Nate and his brother Sam. This dynamic becomes the driving force of the entire plot, so not only does this opening set the theme right away, but give us a good chunk of background info so we're in the loop. Starting all the way from when Nate was a wee middle schooler, the way Sam is portrayed as a teenager is spot on. We get the idea that he's a bit of a bad influence, helping him sneak out of the orphanage late at night to show him his sick new ride and go on a heist. Yet we still get how much Sam loves Nate. He's working his butt off to make enough money for the both of them, and is shown to be Nate's rock in these times of trouble. Life seems to be all but easy for them since the loss of their parents, but as long as they were together, their faith would keep them going. Then we transition to a decade or so later with the Drake brothers in a Panamanian jail. We learn that Nate and Sam have still been stuck together like glue for all these years, and are currently on the hunt for the great pirate captain Avery's treasure. They're driven by sheer ambition and passion, an undying desire to prove themselves to the world, which is immediately contrasted with Rafe, a guy also involved with their plan to find Avery's treasure. Despite Nate not liking or trusting him, he acknowledges the benefit of his parentally acquired wealth. What I love about this opening is how Naughty Dog really sells you on the fact that Rafe is not part of this dream team. Sure, he's getting an equal cut, but differs from the Drake brothers so much when it comes to basically everything about him. He's rash, impulsive, and thoughtless. During their jailbreak, we see that dissimilarity emphasized. Nate and Sam are always there side by side, while Rafe quite literally distances himself. We see Nate miss a jump and get caught in a fight, so Sam drops down to help him out. Rafe is nowhere to be seen. Sam kicks down a ladder for Nate, and Rafe runs in front of him to take it. In the final jump to their freedom, Sam is shot and falls. While Nate is mourning, Rafe straight up tells him,
"Nate, your brother is dead." Either come with me or join him.
Like, I get the urgency, but you could have been a little more empathetic, my guy. All of this is some pretty ample foreshadowing for Rafe's future role. Nate and Rafe escape, bringing us to a sick title card sequence and back to present day. I've heard some people call these next couple of chapters boring, but to be honest, they're some of my favorites. We learn that Nate has made the decision to leave his treasure hunting days behind him and settle down with a normal life. Yet the devs remind us time and time again that he still longs for that adventure. With his current diving job, he's told the next dive is delayed, and it ruins his day. When he gets home, we see him spending ages in the attic, reminiscing about his numerous escapades. Not only is this such a treat for the fans, but we get the chance to sympathize with Nate as he's had to leave all these good times we're so very aware of in the past. Like, look, it's the guy from Uncharted 2, Tenzin from Uncharted 2, the resin from Uncharted 2, a lot of crap from Uncharted 2. But seriously, this chapter is really great. You can stand in front of the mirror and make faces, pop open a LaCroix, look through pictures, or even better, wedding pictures? Okay, y'all don't know this about me, but I love myself a good old cheesy romance. Like, The Princess Bride is one of my favorite movies ever, and whenever I'm feeling down, I will watch this scene from High School Musical 3. That's not a joke. Like, look at this move. Oh, come on, they're adorable. I'm crying. The thing with Nate and Elena is that for the past 3 games, they've just kept teasing us. At the end of Drake's Fortune, they decide to be in a rom-com. In Among Thieves, Chloe shows up out of the blue and messes with things, but it's okay because they get together at the ends. Everything's great, but actually no, because in Drake's Deception, they're on bad terms now. Do you see what I mean? So I think you can imagine how gosh darn stoked I was when I could see their wedding photos, talk on the couch, and play Crash Bandicoot, man.
Is there a problem?
No, just, how do you make it go?
Push the start button.
I knew that.
All right.
I got it.
Nolan North, Emily Rose, and the writers crush it here, because this conversation feels oh so real. It's not like they're talking about anything deep, it's literally, how was work today? But that's why it works. The relatability factor is inevitable, but we're also provided with such an enthralling subversion, because it's the first time we've ever seen them in such a normal, laid-back environment. It flips everything we've known about them on its head, and at the same time, they still feel like the same people we've always known, because such simple conversation topics allow for their personalities to be front and center. I legitimately have the biggest smile on my face every time I watch this.
What? Just keep going. It was interesting.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting. What's my article about?
What?
Just when we thought things were going well, Troy Baker comes knocking on the door. That's right, Sam is back, and as you can imagine, Nate is a bit startled. Turns out he didn't actually die, and he tells him that he just broke out of prison. Nate is super eager to catch up, take him home, meet his wife over dinner, but Sam shuts that idea down quickly. He goes over how the famous drug lord Hector Alcazar was the one who broke him out, and in return, he expects Sam to find Captain Avery's treasure since he mentioned he knew how to find it. But if Sam doesn't find that gold in 3 months, he's as good as dead. Sam tells Nate that he needs him on this mission. There's no other way with the time he has left. Nate scrambles his brain for solutions that don't include him returning to this life of crime, but nothing comes to mind. This right here is a pretty decent starting conflict, and so much of that is due to our opening chapters with Sam. Because of that introduction, we get Nate's love for Sam, and we can feel so much more on board with him returning to his past he swore to leave behind. This is his brother that he thought was gone for the past decade, so there's no chance he's gonna let him go now that he's back. We connect with that urgency to such an increased extent because we know who the hell Sam is and what the hell he means to Nate. But I do have an issue with this initiating event. I know guys, I'm about to critique a narrative, it's crazy. Once Nate agrees to help Sam out, he calls Elena and...
Yeah, listen, you're not gonna believe this. Jameson just walked in here with the permits.
Why? While Nate lying here definitely raises the stakes, I just don't feel like there's a good enough reason for him to. He and Elena have been through thick and thin. Surely if there's anyone on the planet who would understand why he has to do this, it would be her. Nate has a very solid reason for helping Sam out too, so what's the harm in telling her? There just doesn't seem like there's a strong enough motive to hide the truth. Neil, buddy, you nailed it on the head with Joel. That lie was actually warranted. But believe it or not, making a character dishonest doesn't automatically make them well written. It's crazy, I know. Anyway, back to being a Naughty Dog fanboy. I want to mention how well Sam works as a character, and that starts with his design. If someone who knew nothing about this game saw Sam without any context, I guarantee you they would think he's a villain. We get that from the slicked back hair, his lanky figure, the tattoos on his neck, he's always holding a cigar, because everyone knows that only bad guys smoke. That's right, Sully is actually the twist villain of this game. Because of this, the player immediately gets this increased sense of distrust in him, which Naughty Dog continues to play with, flipping your opinion of him back and forth. If you you watched my Pyra and Mithra video, you'll know that subverting appearances like these are a fantastic way of making your characters more compelling and worth the player's attention. Obviously, they still need to make him likable so they can play that funky balancing act of theirs, and that's most definitely achieved. He and Nate's conversations always give me a good old hearty chuckle. They excel in getting you to welcome and cherish the relationship, while still maintaining that necessary edge.
Where would you be without me, huh? Probably at home. Drinking hot cocoa?
What are you, 5?
Oh, tell me you wouldn't go for some hot cocoa right now.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
I feel kind of bad for bashing Nate earlier because he still works really well as a protagonist. The Indiana Jones roots have always been merely an inspiration, because beneath that, Drake continues to be a relatable, regular guy with a big heart and big ambitions, often too big for his own good. His lighthearted and stubborn nature still bleeds through without question. Uncharted 4 deviated from the formula a bit, yes, but Nathan Drake alone embodies the spirit of these games so much that since he remains consistent, it's still gonna feel like Uncharted. The player is always gonna feel at home as long as Nathan is being his usual self. A huge part of that is his passion. He adores the danger and thrill of adventure to an addicting level. Seeing him get all giddy about solving a puzzle is both so encouraging and humorous. I especially love this scene with Sully.
Oh, no, it can't be.
Can't be what?
Oh my God, it's so obvious.
Nate.
Why didn't I see this before?
Jesus, enough of the beautiful mind shit. What the hell are you talking about?
Hang on.
Speaking of Sully, you know we gotta talk about him. I don't know a single Uncharted fan who doesn't adore Victor. How could you not? Except when he's named Mark Wahlberg. Sullivan in the games was and still is an infinitely entertaining and lovable guy. And since Drake's fortune has been invaluable to Nate. What I love about his role in A Thief's End is how much more he's there for Nate in a parental sense. Their classic banter still shines bright as ever, but then we have moments like his talk with Sam pretty early on. From their first meeting, we get the idea that they aren't on good terms. Apparently Sam never saw eye to eye with him, and it's pretty clear as to why it doesn't work the other way around either. Sam is dragging Nate back into this life of risk, and that rubs Sully the wrong way given how he's seen the struggle it was for Nate to finally break away from that life. It's Nate's obsession that I mentioned earlier that Sully knows all too well is his downfall. He remains an incredibly selfless father figure who prioritizes what's best for Nate. Sam most definitely doesn't think in the same way, and Sully shuts down the argument in a sentence.
Took a long time for him to get out of this game.
You see a gun to his head? He chose this. Okay, he's meant for this life.
You really believe that?
Why are you here, Victor?
Because somebody's got to keep an eye out for him.
It's clear that Sully and Elena are Nate's safety net. Anyone who's played the initial 3 games knows that. But Uncharted 4 also accommodates players unfamiliar with these characters so they at least get somewhat close to the acknowledgement of how crucial they are in Nate's life. That's why this downward spiral of terrible decisions influenced by Sam is amplified so well. Simultaneously, we can get behind Sam's predicament while still agreeing Nate should be following his fellow musketeers because we understand the possible repercussions. There's already such a strong conflict without an active antagonist. So, how is the actual antagonist? I'm not talking about this guy, nah. The actual baddie is our boy Rafe. Remember him? Now, Uncharted doesn't have a great track record with villains. I always forget Navarro's name, Lazarevich has the most basic motivation ever, and Talbot, dude, don't even get me started on him. Nobody likes this guy, not even his own voice actor.
And then I followed up with Talbot, the irritating, I hated Talbot, fucking hate that guy.
But I will say, Rafe is at least alright. Rafe's whole deal is that he's a trust fund baby, so he wants to prove to the world that he's more than just his trust fund by finding Avery's treasure by hiring mercenaries with said trust fund. The only reason Rafe works is because he is so perfectly hateable. My guy's such a smug piece of garbage that you just want to see him lose so bad, and for some villains, that is sufficient. He's not nearly as threatening as Lazarevich, but at least he has more of a personality than just being a big scary bald guy who just wants to drink tree sap. Rafe is also accompanied by mercenary leader Nadine Ross, and she's fine. I like her design and Laura Bailey kills it as always, but Nadine's just not super interesting. In nature, she's fairly generic and her motive is literally just being a mercenary. I will say she gets a fulfilling mini arc towards the ends, but we'll get there when we get there. Although I do gotta mention how entertaining her interactions with Nate are. Truthfully, it is thanks to his silly disposition, being such a 180 from Nadine's non-stop dourness.
Have you had enough? Or do you want to keep being a smartass?
Well, you know, being a smartass has gotten me this far in life. Why quit now?
I'm not going to go into full detail of every event chronologically like I usually do, because Uncharted games tend to be two parties participating in wild goose chases to beat each other out to the end goal. We first encounter our adversaries at the auction for the second St. Dismas cross, which we succeed in stealing, leading us to the next clue in Scotland. Then solving a puzzle in Scotland brings us to Madagascar. It's always Nate that has the intellect to figure these things out. The villains are all brain dead and just follow wherever he goes. But as Nate continues to beat them out time and time again, the addiction he managed to escape once starts creeping back in. While he's convinced himself that he's just doing this for Sam, the far more selfish reason for this adventure becomes indisputable. The rapacity and insatiable hunger have come back at full force, and Sully sees right through it.
The biggest pirate treasure of all time is within our grasp.
I thought this was about saving Sam.
It is. But come on, it's both, right? We need the treasure so we can save Sam.
Nate is completely blind as to what's happened to him until it's far too late. Right after that nail-biting Jeep set piece, Nate and the gang return to their hotel to find none other than Elena waiting there. Maybe I just have the memory of a goldfish, but I can't remember the last time Uncharted had the guts to make a scene this emotionally heavy. I swear, this has got to be Emily Rose's best performance in the franchise. This remarkably heartbreaking argument excels in getting both Nate and the player especially to finally take a step back long enough to see the damage. I don't know what kind of psychopath isn't gonna empathize with Elena here. It feels unfeasible not to. Just like Sully, to her, Nate's true feelings about Avery's stash are transparent, and this line from her will remain unforgettable to me.
I don't even care about the treasure.
The look on your face when you walked into this room. If you're done lying to me, then you should stop lying to yourself. I got a plane to catch.
If that wasn't terrible enough, once Elena leaves, Sully tells Nate to go after her, but he refuses and tells Sully to do that for him. Nate shuts out the two most important people in his life, and that is how you do a midpoint. Past that, we see Nate very regrettably continuing the adventure. He's learned the ramifications the hard way, and it's extremely apparent as to how unappealing the treasure seems now. What I love about this next chunk of the story is how they bring back the initial contrast between the Drake brothers that had started to blur as Nate followed Sam's footsteps up until now. Sam now finds himself alone in what used to be communal celebrations of colossal findings. When they finally track down the islands where Libertalia is, Nate isn't nearly as upbeat as we've come to expect. We even see Nate develop the same doubts we heard from Sully earlier, how they're practically chasing a fairy tale. Nate has finally got his feet on the ground again, and we begin to see the shift in dynamic where he becomes the older brother. Coincidentally, they actually do find Libertalia like 2 minutes later, but Nate has the same unenthused reaction, which Sam again points out.
What do you see?
You just want to hear me say it, don't you?
Really want to hear you say it.
All right. Libertalia.
Libertalia!
By now, Nate has learned that no treasure will ever bring more happiness than the closest people in his life. His remorse only grows the longer he stays away on this mission of greed. But there's something else to note about these scenes. How whenever Nate brings up Alcazar, Sam brushes it off.
If only Alcazar saw it that way.
You just can't let us enjoy this, can you?
I'm enjoying it. But we have a goal here, remember?
Trust me, I know about the goal.
We soon realize that this is all some great foreshadowing for what I believe to be a fantastic plot twist. After a brawl out with Nadine, the Drake brothers find themselves cornered by Rafe and his mercs. This is actually one of Rafe's best moments as the villain, acting like the blood-boiling sleazeball he needs to be, putting Nadine's life in jeopardy and having little care when Sam nearly shoots her. Nate attempts to make some negotiations with Rafe to get out of their pickle, and breaks down their situation to win some sympathy points.
He did hard time, our time, and the guy who broke him out, Hector Alcazar, he owes him a lot of money.
Whoa, what the hell are you talking about, Nate? Hector Alcazar died in a shootout in Argentina like 6 months ago. I'm the one that got Samuel out.
Uh-oh. There are two main things that make a good plot twist. Obviously, the less predictable the better. In this case, there is no shot the player sees this coming. Why? Well, because we literally played through the prison breakout. So that event will be ingrained and accepted in our minds having directly experienced it. But like all things in life, a balance is required. A good plot twist should be unpredictable, yes, but seem like the most obvious thing in the world in retrospect. A Thief's End unequivocally achieves that, thanks to the abundant amount of subtle portending. Rafe goes on to tell us how for the past 2 years, he and Sam have been working to find Avery's treasure together. Nate is rightfully dumbfounded, and his reaction to Sam's terrible reasoning mirrors the player's so well.
Jesus, no.
Listen, Avery's treasure was ours. It was always ours.
I left my life for you.
And then Rafe just keeps eating up their family quarrel. I love that I hate him. As a Hail Mary, Nate convinces Rafe that he needs them. One missed clue and he can kiss that treasure goodbye. Rafe does come to terms with the truth, or at least half does, deciding he only needs Sam, attempting to shoot Nathan as Sam takes the bullet for him and Nate falls off the cliff and into a lake. Fortunately, Elena comes in to save him from bleeding his guts out. Now, I've heard a few complaints about this portion of the game, how people believe everything resolves itself too quickly. And much like most of Uncharted 4's criticism, I partially agree with that. With Sam and Sully, absolutely. Sully basically pretends that nothing ever happened between the two, and we'll get to Sam a bit later. With Nate and Elena, however, I genuinely revere how they handled their relationship in these chapters. It takes a while for Nate to gain back Elena's trust, rightfully so, but Naughty Dog still keeps both of them in character. While awkwardness is inevitable, the lighthearted tone of Uncharted remains, and I was never taken out of the game. Heck, I kinda love it when we hear Nate beating himself up over this situation.
Hey, nice jump.
Not bad, right?
Way to go, Nate. Piss a girl like that off. Idiot.
Now, don't get me wrong, there's plenty of acknowledgement of Nate's mistake. Each instance has such a flawlessly bittersweet taste to it. Right after Elena finishes patching him up, Nate goes to say thank you and...
Thanks for saving me. Again.
I almost didn't this time.
Like, ugh, my heart, dude. The thing is, she's totally right though, and it stings so bad because you just want the best for both of them. And can I just take this moment to say I love Elena in this game? She's been a favorite of mine in all of them, but with 4 in particular, she is just so likable. Whether it's her charisma or independence, it's always a joy whenever she's in a scene. Like, I love their relationship, but let's be honest, Nate does not deserve her. And Naughty Dog plays to that notion quite a bit here. In my opinion, a lot of what makes these moments so sentimental is the idea that Elena very well could leave him. The devs completely sell us on the idea that Elena can take care of herself, as if we didn't already know that. There's this great section where they get you thinking Elena's gonna die, and you have to rush over as Nate only to find that she just bloody saved herself without breaking a sweat. Then they're trying to get the Pyrotech elevator to work, and Nate is convinced that there's no chance, and she proves him wrong real fast. I especially admire this talk on the elevator, where Nate asks why she came back, and the way she phrases her answer makes it feel like it was out of obligation.
Well, I couldn't leave when you were clearly in over your head. And you know, there's that whole marriage vow thing.
For better or worse.
Yeah. For better or worse.
Like, damn dude, Uncharted is not supposed to make me cry. Bit by bit, she does start to forgive him. And since the devs take advantage of both gameplay and cutscene to develop their relationship, the growth feels gradual enough to be believable. I get that it's still not the most realistic thing in the world, and we could argue all day about how terrible what Nate did was. But when making a sequel, it is crucial that you invoke emotions that evolve from those of your predecessors. The dynamic of Nate and Elena is at the heart of Uncharted, so destroying that is going to make it 10 times harder to be in service of your audience. So given the tone of the franchise, I think they handled it best they could. This next section of gameplay is at its core very wholesome, and y'all know by now that I'm all for that. They're making jokes again, poking fun at each other, and we're all reminded, oh yeah, this is my OTP. But just when we thought things were heading up, we get caught in a trap, attempt to escape by the skin of our teeth, and our worst fears start to become a reality.
It's just like old times, huh? Lena? Lena? Hey. Hey. Lena, come on. Lena.
My hero.
Oh, no, you didn't do that. No. That's not funny.
Oh, but it is, Nate. Alright, seriously though, when I got to this part for the first time, I lost it. I was so scared, dude. This game is directed by Neil Druckmann, for crying out loud. I don't trust him. On the real, these adorable moments are more than just fuel for the GMVs. I love taking the cuteness as much as the next guy, but the more significant role is getting you fully on Nate's side again. My guy messed up big time, and I would imagine a lot of players started to feel a bit disconnected from their favorite dude raider as the campaign progressed. Still engrossed, but not necessarily in full agreement with his actions. Taking a step back like this lets Nate learn his lesson, and the player gets to see that crystal clear. Because if the player hates the protagonist, 90% of the time they're going to become increasingly disengaged with any endeavor they pursue, and as a result, your narrative as a whole. Sorry, I think that was some bad character writing in my throat. There's actually this exemplary scene to display Nathan's character arc. He and Sam finally meet up again after that ridiculous plot twist, and Nate does forgive Sam like instantly, which is a bit strange, but I'll let it slide because it would be hypocritical for Nate to hold a grudge. The OG Three Musketeers proceed to head in the direction of Sully's plane, but Sam stops them and mentions a shortcut. Obviously not to Sully's ship, but to Avery's. Sully, Elena, and I all roll our eyes, so Sam naturally goes to convince Nathan, claiming that they just don't get it. They couldn't possibly understand. It's not a phase, Mom! So right here is when we see Nate fully embrace that role of the new, older Drake brother.
Actually, Sam, they do. They really do. Okay. Trust me, they've seen this kind of obsession before. Sam, we're not those kids anymore. We're not. And we got nothing to prove.
Is it the exact same arc as Uncharted 3? Well, yeah, but at least it's done better. 2 seconds later, the brothers get separated while trying to cross a gap. Nate reaches out his hand, prompting Sam to jump and saying he'll catch him. But Sam takes a look back, and like the addict he is, runs towards the treasure. Knowing Sam's gonna get himself killed, our trio goes after him. However, Elena and Sully get sidelined in this really lazy way, like that wall is really not that high, but we'll just go with it. Anyway, we've made it to Climax Town now. Right before boarding Avery's ship ourselves, we get this great scene with Rafe and Nadine, who've been loading the gold onto their boats already. Nadine plans to turn back, as most of her men have been killed, and there's no way she's stepping on Avery's ship after all the traps we've seen. Rafe couldn't care less about casualties, because it's all the same when it's his name being written in the history books. One thing leads to another, and Rafe slaps her. Nadine isn't gonna take that, but it's not like she can do much damage.
Thing about mercenaries, Nadine, their loyalty, it's bought. It's not earned.
Is that not the most perfect line for his character? He's been solidified as this loathsome snake that we want to punt more than anything else. And that's great news for us. When we get back in control of Nate, we see that final chapter card and it gives me chills every time. Nate scours the ship to eventually find Sam, and unfortunately Rafe as well. Nadine then shows up to relieve Nate of his gun, but also get Rafe back for the conflict earlier. It's a satisfying semi-arc for her character. She then goes to leave them alone in the burning ship, but not before mentioning the 2 pirate corpses, evidently being Avery and 2, killing each other over avarice. Sure, it's a basic lesson, but you gotta admit the way they do it here is pretty darn cool. That leaves Nate and Rafe alone, and as I'm sure you can imagine, Rafe isn't too down with the power of friendship. So it's fencing time. I gotta say, I love Rafe's dialogue in this duel. He starts things off by listing all of Nate's achievements throughout the series, and those shivers hit you right away.
You wanna hear insane? Nathan Drake raced a madman and his entire army to the steps of Shambhala.
That's Jesus.
Nathan Drake found the lost city in the middle of the Rub al-Khali desert.
God damn it. Come on, we can get out of here together.
Nathan Drake discovered the fabled El Dorado.
Come on, Rafe. Stop.
Nathan Drake is a legend. You know, I shot the man who told me that.
Look, I get it. You don't like me very much.
It's so chillingly climactic, and you get this feeling like this really could be a thief's end. The invincible Nathan Drake all of a sudden seems so vulnerable. Although, I will say it's kinda odd that Rafe mentions the events out of order, so I guess he played Drake's fortune last, but dude, come on, get your chronology right. The fight ends with us winning in the least gruesome way possible, cause you know they gotta maintain that T rating. Nate tries to save Sam, but the ship's about to blow. Then Sam tells us that he's fine with dying because all he ever wanted was to find the treasure with him. That is heartbreaking, man. Of course, Nate doesn't let that happen, and by using a centuries-old cannon that somehow still works, they blow their way out. One thing I love about this ending is that it takes its sweet time to tie up every loose end you can think of. That starts with the scene on the docks here. Nate says farewell to Sully and Sam for the time being, and this final exchange between the Drake brothers is gold.
I just kind of thought that after we found Avery's treasure, I'd be satisfied. Instead, I've kind of left with this strange feeling of
emptiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you know, as thrilling as the next adventure might be, in the end, you're always left with that same feeling. And sometimes you just gotta choose what you're going to keep and what you're gonna let go.
Such a wholesome way to round things off after the roller coaster that was their relationship in this game. And once again, it reminds you of the moral of the story, if you will. The next day, we see Nate back at work in the office, only to find out that he's the new owner of Jameson Marines. Turns out Sam managed to sneak some treasure back from the ship, so Nate and Elena can now revive her old show to film the salvaging job in Malaysia. It comes full circle. Now they get the chance to do what they love for a living. Then on top of that, the devs again reference Uncharted 2's wholesome as hell ending.
Or I could play for it.
Seriously?
No, listen, I have been practicing. I'm getting good.
No.
My hand-eye is way better than it used to be. Really?
I cannot do that to you again.
Are you afraid to play me?
I am so not afraid
On a
to
scale
play
of
you.
1 to 10, how scared are you to play me?
Like a 3.
Yeah, well, jack that up to like 11, all right? Because I'm coming for you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So by now you're probably thinking the game's over, but nope, you're playing Crash Bandicoot again. After the level's over, the camera pans around and you're expecting to see Nate or Elena, but instead it's a young girl. What? Dude, I lost my marbles! This epilogue is something straight out of a fan fiction, except I don't have to open up Wattpad and deal with all the grammatical errors. Naughty Dog is so thorough in saying goodbye to these characters in this series. It feels like us fans are being honored with a lengthy conclusion to something that holds a special place in all our hearts. I freaked out over the wedding pictures before, so imagine my mind when I turn to the baby pictures in the scrapbook. They let you take all the time you need to explore their gorgeous beach home and take in the photos, post-its on the fridge, a letter from Sully, magazine covers, too much to name, man. My heart rate then goes even farther off the charts when Cassie, that's her name by the way, named after Nate's mom, it's very cute, finds all the skeletons in Dad's closet. Of course she gets caught and...
Hey, there you are.
Hey.
Been looking for you.
They're old! I cannot help having the biggest grin on my face whenever I watch this scene. At this point, an ambulance is driving to my house because I'm having an overdose on fan service. It feels way too good to be true, and it still blows my mind that this is in the official game. Nate and Elena decide it's finally time to have the talk. So the two start at the very beginning, with how they met in Uncharted 1. Cassie doesn't believe them for a second.
You're saying that you were attacked by pirates after you found the coffin of Sir Francis Drake. Is that right?
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much
right.
it. Yeah.
Bullshit.
Language.
Crap.
Better.
They go to continue the story on the water, and after a shot of the two most important photos in the series, the credits roll. Thus concluding a proficient narrative that, while tells a generic lesson, does so in an entertaining, nail-biting, and replayable way. A massive step up from the previous entries, and ties everything together better than anyone could have asked for. It's rare, and such a pleasant surprise when we find those games that instantly have us enamored and hold us tight until the very end. While obviously not a perfect game, A Thief's End was without a doubt one of those adventures I just knew I had to see all the way through. There was no chance of me playing anything else until I was finished with this guy. I was aiming for this video to be 30 minutes long, and judging by the word count right now, there's no chance it turned out that short. This is the longest script I've ever written, and I still feel like I've barely said anything about the game. So if that doesn't speak volumes as to how good it is, I don't know what does. It's thankfully part of the PS Plus collection. That's how I played it, so loads of you already have access to this hell of a ride. If you're still here, or even if you aren't, thank you so much for sticking around and tuning into the Elena Fisher fan club. I had a blast putting this video together, and I genuinely do hope you loved it as much as I do. As of writing this, we are getting insanely close to 1,000 subscribers, which is so mind-boggling to me. Again, I appreciate every second you listen to me talk, and to think that so many of you are happy to take the time out of your day to do so voluntarily makes my heart melt. I send all my gratitude and love your way, and I hope you have a fantastic day.